The following is a local resident producers program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Media Services, the City of Oshkosh, or Time Warner Cable.
Hi everyone, welcome to Eye on Oshkosh. Cheryl Hentz here, and no, this is not my co-host Dan Hentz to my right. Dan had to be out of town tonight for some family functions, and so I am winging it on my own, but I'm very proud and pleased to be joined by two folks tonight. Karen Bowen to my right, and outgoing school superintendent Ron Heilmann to my left. And the purpose of the show tonight is to talk a little bit with Ron about, you know, what he's done here in the last 10 years and what kind of legacy he is leaving behind, and what he hopes to accomplish in his new district as he joins the Eau Claire School District starting July 1st. So thanks to both of you for being here.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate the invitation.
Very much. And Dan did send in some questions, so I'm just going to kind of, you know, be mixing his in with mine as we go through this. But, you know, first of all, congratulations on your appointment over there, even though I think some of us are sorry to see you leave here. You know, you've weathered a lot of storms, as Amy Weinsheim said on last week's show, but, you know, I think that you have done a lot of good things for the district.
I appreciate that. And, you know, it's funny, I've talked to people, and many times until you know that you're going to be going someplace else, people don't come up and go out of their way to say things to you. And the number of folks that have come up and, you know, thanked me for my years of service in Oshkosh has been very gratifying. And I usually respond by saying, you know, I haven't decided totally what, you know, the future portends for me. I haven't put my house up for sale at this point in time. You know, will I sometime in the future consider retiring in Oshkosh? A possibility. So. But I appreciate those kind thoughts.
Sure. So you might hang on to your house and see what the future holds
possibly.
for you.
I mean, right now the real estate market's not very good, and there's a couple of homes on my street for sale. So I thought, well, better not to glut the market. It lets me do some outside improvements that I've been working on over the years.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, what you know, Karen, you've served on the school board for a good chunk of the time that Ron has been here.
The entire time, as a matter of
fact.
Is
it the entire
time?
time?
I was actually on the board when we hired Ron.
That's right.
Okay. All right. So, you know, what do you see as some of his, this is kind of like a this is your life sort of
yes,
thing.
Yes, it flashes before your eyes.
What do you see as some of the things that he has done to improve the district? I know Amy had mentioned test scores, and maybe you can elaborate a little more on that for someone who didn't see that show.
Well, not just test scores, but doing the proverbial more with less, because while Ron's been here, the state budget has taken a hit. We certainly have had increases in what we get from the state and just in general funding, but the increases have decreased. We get less funding because we are a declining enrollment school district, but all of that doesn't seem to have stood in Ron's way, because as the Eau Claire people pointed out to me, they decided they wanted him really badly because they see that we are among the lowest spending districts in the state, for our size in particular, and yet our test scores keep rising. We keep losing administrators. We have probably one of the leanest administrations in the state. Certainly, we know we do for our size again, and yet we keep managing to keep going up. And I think that's that, and some of the things that Ron has kind of dug his heels in on in terms of students at risk. For example, we just came from East High School's graduation tonight, which we certainly would not have had, I don't think, without Ron's.
Well, and you know, Teresa Thiel had sent this over to me also, you know, and she has said that she's always appreciated your open door policy, and of course she served a term on the board. You know, she said he's always had an open door policy. It amazes me that the superintendent in a district this size actually speaks to people calling to complain about a snow day being called or not called, parents who don't like everyday math, and many other instances where I would expect calls to be handed off to staff, but he takes the time to listen to people's concerns before directing them to those who will work with them further. You know, and keeping up to date on you know, education bills that are before lawmaking bodies and so forth.
Right.
That was another thing that she said she appreciated. And Ron, I know it's hard to, you know, be boastful about oneself, but you know, what do you see as some of your biggest accomplishments here in the district in the last decade?
Well, I think Karen alluded to a few of them, and you know, I'm going to mention probably about 7 or 8, and they're not in any particular order. They're kind of what comes to mind.
Sure.
Maybe the first one is in a prioritized order, and that is what Karen alluded to with the at-risk program, student programming. When I came to Oshkosh, I was a little surprised that given a district of our size and complexity and student demographic makeup, that we did not offer more services for students at risk, especially identification at an earlier age, to try and mitigate perhaps some of the circumstances that put them more at risk of not graduating from high school. So along with a team of central office site administrators and teachers, counselors, worked with putting together a charter bill or a charter application for Oshkosh East High School. That one and the newest program that's kind of, I don't want to say an offshoot, but complements Oshkosh East, the New Start program, which is a way for students who are way behind on credits and are 17 and 18 years old to get a regular high school diploma in a year. So those things are a couple that I'd point to. Karen's already, again, alluded to what we've done to really close the achievement gap between various student subgroups. We still have work to do on that. We haven't certainly reached everything, but you know, we're very, very proud that, you know, of the 20 largest school districts in the state, at 3rd through 8th grade level, our math test scores are amongst the tops in the state, and we're making tremendous gains in that particular area and a lot of notoriety. You know, we're one of the few school districts that has one of our SAGE schools, Webster Stanley Elementary, that's actually achieved and received the New Wisconsin Schools of Promise, Schools of Recognition every year that the program has been offered, all 5 years. So those are just a few of the things. We've made some pretty extensive changes at our middle schools and high schools. We went away from an 8-period day where every class from literacy to math to orchestra was kind of treated the same, and said, you know, really at this level we want students to have that required exploratory experience, but we also want them to be well grounded in the core academic areas, and really have put a lot of effort in shoring up, and again, we've seen it in test scores in literacy and math. And then the last thing I'll mention is at the high schools, the creation of the core teams in 9th and 10th grade, which kind of eases the transition from a middle school where the students are in houses to a 9th and 10th grade where they have a common set of 4 teachers in the core areas. It has really helped. And then our next step, which is to move our academies where students really are taking a coherent sequence of courses that will really prepare them well for their future education and careers.
Well, and I think there's a certain dedication also, both personal and professional on your part. You know, I'm certainly not in the school district office, you know, day in and day out, but I do know that from watching the school board meetings, I can't recall anyway, and you know, as I age, like the rest of us, our memory fails from time to time, but I can't recall you not being at a school board meeting.
No. I've not missed one.
Really?
No.
In all 10 years?
I've had.
See, I think that that's very commendable.
I've had 1 sick day in 10 years.
That's also commendable.
We think, we hope, yes.
But you know, that's another testament, I think, to your dedication to the job, the staff, you know, and the students. So,
well, I think, you know, people look to the superintendent of schools as, you know, the leader, and they look at what I model, not what I say. And so I think, you know, I personally don't like to be out of the district attending a lot of events during the school year when students are there, because I think being there, being available for students, for parents, for our staff members is absolutely critical. You mentioned what Teresa said about taking phone calls. You know, regardless of the size of the district, people want to talk to the superintendent. And, you know, do I take every phone call that comes in? No, but I will take calls, especially, usually it's on snow days when I don't call off school that I get the calls. And, you know, I want people to understand why. And, you know, are we concerned with student and Our student safety, absolutely. And I always tell parents, if you are that concerned that you don't want to send your child to school, do not, and let them know you've talked to me, and it'll be excused absence. So, but I think they want to know, kind of what's the thinking that goes on behind some of the decisions, and I'd like for them to hear that from me.
Sure, sure. And I should just say, this is off the subject, of course, but it's a technical thing. The graphics system here at the studios had broken down earlier today, and so unfortunately, the show that we taped last week with Amy, the show that you saw last week, we taped it earlier tonight. It had no graphics, and this one will have no graphics, so people's names won't be appearing. And there won't be any credits at the end of the show, and any other information, school district's website, whatever, it unfortunately won't be on. But by the next time we tape, we're told that it should be back up and running. So anyway, I think Amy said it best. You've been called by some a non-leader, but Amy, when she was on, said it best. She said, you have been a silent leader, and that's probably very true. And not only that, but you can only do as much as the school board allows you to do. If you bring forward ideas, and a majority of the school board, votes them down, then that's not something that you have any control over.
A couple thoughts on that. Number one. I've studied leadership, and I've shared what I've found in my studies of leadership with students and with staff. I'm not the type of leader that feels that I have to personally be out there taking the credit for everything that happens. And in fact, we've talked a lot in our district about succession planning, of having a plan in place so when key people leave, many of our student programs, services, what we really value will continue, that there's a legacy, that's perhaps a much more important legacy than having Ron Heilmann carrying the banner over his shoulder, leading it every way. So I always am looking at ways of empowering my central office staff, my teaching staff, my paraprofessional staff, providing them the training, professional training they need, and then getting out of the way and letting them do what they need to do to get things done. I'm there to provide support and guidance along the way. But I know that that's a style that sometimes is very different. I think it's a style more and more what I've found that school districts and school boards are looking for, rather than putting everything on one person's back. What is done to create a culture of leadership within the school district. So yeah, I think that maybe is a little different than the Oshkosh community, or what people maybe historically have thought of as a superintendent of schools.
Any, of course, we've talked about what you feel your accomplishments are, and what the board or what Karen feels your accomplishments are. The other side of that, of course, is there anything, and if so, what, that you would have liked to have gotten accomplished in the last decade and haven't been able to for whatever reason?
An obvious one. I'd like to have had our facilities plan a lot further along than what it is. Having said that, I don't apologize for anything that we've done to this point in time. It would have been very, very easy for us to say, let's do what we did in 1996 and 1998 and 2001, which is think what we just need to patch the holes, get by for the next 2 to 3 years. And the board and I talked about that at length. In terms of what we really wanted, which was a 10-year plan. And actually we talked 15 to 20 years, and the experts came in and said, no, Ron, you better narrow it to 10 because there's too many variables that could change. I would like that to have been further along, but we tackled so many things. We did not shy away from anything that was of a controversial nature, but that needed to be talked about. Those were things such as school boundaries. There's probably nothing that'll bring an audience and parents out to a school board meeting than talking about changing boundaries. Nothing
saw
more.
that.
Yes.
Isn't that the truth?
Number two, we talked about the impact that socioeconomics, and in particular, the impact poverty plays on student learning. When you have a high concentration of students and families in poverty at one school, what pressures does that put on that school for student programs, student learning, and really the challenges it puts on the board and the central administration to say, we can't treat everybody equally. We may have to concentrate resources here. So those are some of the things, in addition to looking at the number of facilities that we operate, the cost of operating those facilities, and really the dollars we would need to put in to say, this is a facility we want to educate our students in, not just 10 years from now, but if we're putting a lot of money into it, 25 to 50 years from now. So that's what made it very complex. You know, we know more about our facilities today than we've ever known in the past. And, you know, we have, so when people come up and ask questions about, well, tell us how much we would have to put in the plumbing in this particular building, we can give them, you know, dollar figures that are, you know, pretty much 2007, 2008 dollars, what it would take to bring things up to snuff. You know, in the past that would have been a guess. We have some hard numbers now.
Well, and I think also, you know, one thing that I will just sort of interject here about things that I think you have brought to this district is, you know, for many years I think the district had a reputation of not having a lot of open communication, not being very good communicators, and you've seen that in your time on the board as well, Karen.
Yes.
And you know, I think that has changed over the last few years. I've certainly seen it change. Now, some may say there's still a communication problem. Well, you know, there's always room for improvement. But as long as you recognize that and are willing to work on that, that's all that really matters. But, you know, you have suggested, and the board has gone along with, you know, setting up teams to work on the boundary issues and the facilities issues and things. And that has maybe slowed the process down, you know, in some cases probably by a lot. But it was necessary participation, I think, by the community.
Yeah, there are several people in the community who have said to me, the superintendent should tell the board what to do. That misses the point altogether. That is not how schools are governed. No school is governed that way, whether it's a higher education institution, a technical college. The superintendent and the CEO can share with the board their vision, their plans, their dreams, their hopes, but the board is the one in the end that makes the decision. And when you have a board that isn't necessarily willing to come together, you've got a problem. And that's been something that Ron's had to deal with the entire time he's been here, with some rare exceptions. We've had a couple of boards in the time he's been here that have been quite cohesive, and I'm hoping that we're going to go into that. Now we have a tough transition in front of us. I mean, if you listen to what Ron's been saying, you kind of think, I was just thinking, gosh, if this were an interview, we'd hire him. Well, we did.
You did, and now someone else has.
Yeah, hired him away.
You know, how does that process work, Ron? Are you like do search firms find you? Are you on a list with some search firms, or how did they come in Eau Claire to find you?
In the case of Eau Claire, I actually applied to the Eau Claire, and that was run. There are two large search firms. In fact, they were the two finalists that the Oshkosh Area School District looked at, and then there are some other firms that provide that role. The Wisconsin Association of School Boards actually conducted the Eau Claire search, but I actually applied for that. They do an initial screening and narrow it down. I think there were probably 6 people that were initially interviewed. They then narrowed it down from 6 to 2. There were 2 finalists, myself and another gentleman from Clinton, Iowa, and from there they did the final interviews and made their decision.
Sure. And I know that much has been made by some about, you know, the salary package that you're getting over in Eau Claire. And I did talk with Amy about this on the last show. You know, there are a number of superintendent positions that are available right now.
Absolutely.
You know, as I think I said it, too many positions, not enough people, or something like that. And, you know, while that sounds real cute, it is, in fact, the reality of the situation. And, you know, I'm sure that that's probably why you were offered the kind of package that you were offered. And I spoke with Amy about what she thinks it's going to do to, you know, what has to be offered to someone here. What are your thoughts on that, Karen?
I agree with Amy. We really have to take a long, hard look at what we are going to offer a new person. If we expect to get someone anywhere near Ron's caliber, we really have to take a look at that. And it's going to be very difficult for some people to swallow that. I mean, I think people think that that administrators grow on trees like money, which all we know is not true. That the good administrator, the administrator who has what it takes to lead a district like Oshkosh, with Oshkosh's demographics, with our makeup, with what we want to do in this district, is going to be expensive. It's not, and it's really not even expensive. If you talk about expensive as being above the norm, we have to get to the norm.
Right. It's interesting
very
when
difficult.
when I applied for Eau Claire and that whole process, looking at the data, if you look at the Wisconsin and the 4 states that surround Wisconsin, Michigan, Illinois, Iowa, Minnesota, and you throw Wisconsin in there, put in 5 states. If you look at just about across the board, small districts, medium districts, larger districts, and urban districts, Wisconsin is 5th out of 5th. We pay the lowest of the 5 states. And so that makes it increasingly difficult when the candidate pool from within the state is small to begin with, and then you're trying to attract people perhaps from a surrounding state where the salaries are higher. It puts a tremendous amount of pressure on school districts in our state.
Sure.
Not every state, of course, is under the same very restrictive revenue controls that Wisconsin is. So that, again, that's just another thing that kind of is heaped on top of some of the tough decisions boards have to make. If they're making decisions on cutting programs and then they're bringing in a new superintendent and they're paying that person considerably more than the former superintendent, people are saying, is that a good use of money? You're cutting my son's or my daughter's first grade teacher, and now you're paying this person about the equivalent, maybe more of what that teacher was earning. That's a really hard pill for people to swallow. So
Sure.
it puts every school district and every school board in really tough circumstances.
But it's a necessary evil? Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's I guess if you liken it to the housing market, it's a seller's market in terms of the superintendents or the people with that caliber at this point. And I don't think we're necessarily taking advantage of it. If Wisconsin across the 50 states was, in the top 10 in the 50 states and what they were paying superintendent salaries, maybe you could make the argument that there was some selfishness there. But when we're 5th out of the 5 states in the northern part of the Midwest, I don't think that that's the case. It's happening in the superintendent of schools market. We've seen it also happening in our high school principal market to get the top candidates. We've had to go almost outside of our salary scales to attract top people. And if you talk to search firms and other businesses, they're finding that their candidate pools are getting much smaller too if you're competing for the top level people. As our population continues to age and the number of young adults coming up and filling those positions gets fewer and fewer, it's a scary thought, but that's going to happen and spill over to not just the education but into other professions.
Sure. Let's talk about the upcoming referendum that you're looking at for February. And I'll throw this out to both of you because I'm sure you both have some pretty strong opinions on it. The fact that you're leaving, how does that, if at all, change the referendum? And, the same question to you, Karen. I mean, this is going to be, and the fact that there's an upcoming referendum, will that make it a little bit more difficult to hire a superintendent? I guess, Ron, you can go first, or whoever wants to go first here.
Well, it's funny you ask that question because I've been asked that question a lot by our board, by the board in Eau Claire, and many other folks in our community. One of the things, and again, it's back to my leadership style, one of the things I made as we went out and talked to the community about our needs, our facilities needs, I didn't make this all about Ron Heilmann being the possessor of all of the knowledge, in that Ron Heilmann being the sole decision maker. We had 6 different teams that did a tremendous amount of work on 6 very discrete areas. I co-chaired the particular team that looked at boundaries, but we have a team 6 which is really did the work after the other 5 teams had finished and handed off, that's putting this all together. So we have very educated folks, and they're not just school administrators. Some of them are parents who have children in our schools that have a tremendous knowledge base that can take this referendum and move it forward. It's not dependent upon Ron Heilmann. I really believe that, regardless of who will step in, that we have the supports in place to make the referendum successful.
Okay.
And I definitely agree with that. We've got some people who are remarkably well versed, far more versed in certain elements than I would be as a board member. And I want to say 2 things. One is that the right candidate, the right person for us will take this on as a challenge. And essentially, Ron stepped in right after the 1997 referendum and ran with the second referendum, the one that built Jefferson, and worked on Merrill and did a great job. And I think that's probably how he viewed it. Oh, good, I get to go out there and mess with a referendum, and something that needs to be done. The other thing is that with this search firm that we've selected, we're asking them to do two things. We're asking them to help us find candidates who are willing to do that, and also to allude to the previous question, to help us set salaries.
Okay.
And so that we have someone objective helping us do that. But part of that objectivity is that they can help us find somebody to do that. But for me, the leadership style that Ron's been talking about is a good one, and I think that it's sort of like he's got the nestlings ready to go off and fly, and I think we can do it. It's not a matter of this is something that either the board or Ron take as a personal need. This is what the district needs, and as we go forward with this, we as a community have to make a decision. Are we making a commitment to education? Are we making a commitment to making our community a better place? And that's going to be a hard decision. It's going to be a change. It's not just a school. It's not just, as Ron pointed out, not just a building. Okay. It's the whole package.
Well, Todd Gray, very quickly, is a finalist in Waukesha. By the time this show airs, they may very well have made their decision as to whether or not he's going to be their new superintendent. He's just come in this school year as the finance director after we lost the other one after not a very short, a long period of time rather. If he leaves, what does that do, if anything, to having to fill one more position in this district?
Well, it does make things a little more difficult, but as Ron was just pointing out to me, there are how many interims in Eau Claire, did you say?
5 interim positions.
5 interim positions, not all, as he said, in central office, but nevertheless, there are some people out there who can fill Todd's shoes, not very easily, because Todd is really quite the expert, and probably nationally known as well as within the state in his field. So, but Todd needs to do what Todd needs to do. What's best for him, that comes first. And we appreciate his having stepped in. We have had some problems with that position. We have to take a look at why that is and what we can do about it.
Okay. Very quickly, with only about a minute or minute and a half left, we touched on your accomplishments and so forth, Ron. What do you want your legacy to be here in Oshkosh?
Whoa. Hopefully that I was a very student-centered superintendent. I spend a tremendous amount of time at our schools. People that know me in the central office, call me kind of the hyperactive superintendent. I don't sit in my office. I have a hard time staying seated without walking around, kind of checking on things. And it's not because I'm a Budinsky type person. Where the exciting stuff happens is in our classrooms every day. And really what I see my role as is really supporting those efforts of the teachers, of the principals, of the things that are happening at our schools. I also understand my role as the superintendent of working with the board, and really, effective school teams are where effective boards and superintendents work together as a team. Sure. And again, we've had that at times. We've not had that at times. We've probably covered the gamut in a 10-year period.
It's a roller coaster.
It's a roller coaster,
like most things in life. So, well, thank you both very much for being here tonight. And Ron, just I have not always agreed with certain things that you have done within the district or proposed, but I've always supported the things that you have tried to accomplish. And maybe we just would have gone about it different ways, but you're the superintendent, I'm just a lowly talk show host, But to give 10 years of yourself in any form of public service is something to be commended. And as one citizen to you, I just want to say thank you.
I appreciate that.
And I'm sure that I speak for many, many people out there. So, and best of luck to you in Eau Claire.
Appreciate it.
Take
Thank
care.
you. Okay.
Karen, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Cheryl. Thanks for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thanks to the crew, and we're going to be taking a very short break here, and when we come back, we will be joined by 2 directors from some local animal shelters, and we'll be talking about puppy mills. So, but thanks to the crew anyway, so we'll be right back.
We just escaped.
I escaped. By foot.
Run across a border.
I couldn't practice my religion. I was put to work in forced labor camps.
If I stay in Cambodia, I would have been dead by now.
If you think differently, then you're an enemy.
If you know how to read and write, you're dead. You speak your mind, you're dead.
The only way to express what I wanted to do was to get out.
I got to the country when I was about 14 years old.
I was 20.
I was 24.
I came here with nothing. No money, no English.
America stood for freedom, it stands for freedom, and that's what all my generation, young generation, wanted to be there. For the first time, I felt like I have a right to be on this earth.
Here, you can do whatever you want to do.
I love my life here. I feel at home.
I'm free to do what I want. Freedom to me means my life.
How you doing?
Hi.
Hi.
Have a nice day.
You too.
Thanks.
If only child abuse were this easy to recognize. If you even suspect abuse, call 1-800-4-A-CHILD. All calls are anonymous and confidential. Trust your instincts.
Poor nutrition today will increase Sarah's chances of anemia, add to her healthcare costs, sick days, even stunt her ability to learn. And the thing is, Sarah's not even born yet. Get proper nutrition before it's too late. Call or visit WIC. WIC provides nutrition information, healthcare referrals, even food. Your child has you, and you have WIC.
Hi, welcome back to the second half of Eye on Oshkosh. Joined now by Joni Geiger from the Oshkosh Area Humane Society. She's their executive director, and also the director of the Green Lake Area Animal Shelter. Janine Rubeck is to my right, and we're going to be talking mostly about puppy mills tonight. And I should say that you know, we had some I guess viewers ask you know, and suggest that we do a show on puppy mills. Also, one of our crew had suggested it, and I had talked to a person who is involved with the statewide effort on eliminating puppy mills, or at least reducing them. I think we'd all like to see them eliminated,
Yes.
but you got to take little baby steps, I guess. And she had some personal issues that she was not able to commit to a full hour tonight. She couldn't give us a half an hour. So she suggested that I have these folks on and kind of set the stage, and then we're going to have Eileen on for a full hour, probably in a couple of months from now. But so for now, we're going to talk a little bit about puppy mills, and as Eileen wanted, set the stage. So
Yes.
thanks to both of you
Yes.
for being here.
Thanks for having
Thanks
us.
for having us.
You know, I guess, you know, I think that a lot of people probably know what a puppy mill is. And Oprah Winfrey did a show a couple months back on puppy mills, and it was sobering, it was saddening, angering, you
Yeah.
know, the
Yeah.
emotions about it run the gamut.
Sure.
But for anyone who is not aware of what a puppy mill is, you know, tell us what it is and why it's, you know, such a terrible thing.
Well, I think let's talk about maybe what it isn't. And then we can kind of, because it runs a full gamut. Most people, when they think of puppy mill, Cheryl, think of rows and rows and rows of cages and animals being housed in these small little chicken cages and in horrific conditions, and just volumes and volumes of dogs and puppies being sold for profit. But you can also reduce that as well. You can reduce those numbers. There's lots of people out there that are breeding for profit. They may have 50 animals, they may have 15 animals, but the point is that the conditions are fairly horrific. Now, when we talk about the traditional type of puppy mills, that's usually something, and we talked about this earlier, about them being more rural. They're out in the country, and there's hundreds of dogs, unfortunately, that are being bred, and the truth of the matter is that those are people, these are brokers that are making huge amount of money off of these animals, and these animals are strictly just property. That's, you know, they're expendable. So, you know, when you talk about backyard breeders and you talk about all different types of breeders out there. What you really need to look for is a good breeder, and anything that doesn't fall in that category could be considered someone who's a poor breeder or a puppy miller.
Okay.
You know, so I think there's, you know, Wisconsin is very quickly becoming a state that has. We're right now. They're talking about number 3. We're number 3 in the nation, and that's pretty sad.
With the number of puppy mills?
Yeah, they're just coming across the state
Pennsylvania
here.
and Arkansas?
Yes.
Yeah.
They're coming across the state here because, again, we have no laws. So therefore, these brokers, these vast numbers of animals and in horrific conditions are being, you know, set up in Wisconsin. Land's cheap here, you know, and unfortunately, that's what's happening. And the tide is, we're seeing it. I never saw it years ago, and we're seeing it now. And Janine in Green Lake, unfortunately, is seeing it much more frequently. So.
Well, and you know, I mentioned in the earlier part of the show that the machine that handles the graphics went down earlier today. So unfortunately, we cannot put the website address up. But there is a statewide organization, and you can go to it on the internet. And I'll try and remember to a couple times at least throughout the show to give the website address. But it is www.nowisconsinpuppymills.com, is
Yep,
it?
that is
or
correct.
.org?
.com.
Okay. And no is N-O, not
Right.
knowledge type. So
And it's mills, not mill, but it's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Didn't I say that?
You did, but just in case it
Oh,
wasn't.
okay.
Yep.
So it's www.nowisconsinpuppymills.com.
Yeah.
And I'll try and remember to put that on my website too, so
Yeah,
that, you know, it's
absolutely.
kind of bad when you don't have the graphics and you can put it up, but we'll try and you know, do other things to make up for that. So again, we are not to confuse a puppy mill breeder with a responsible breeder.
Responsible breeder.
And we'll talk about ways that you can tell the difference. And or a backyard breeder, which, you know, when I think of a backyard breeder, guys, I think of it as someone who has a dog who wants to breed a litter of pups and, you know, give them away to some relatives or friends or sell them for a few bucks here and there. They're not. It's not a money-making operation for them.
Yeah.
Do I have that right?
I think you're about halfway there. I think part
Okay.
of it might be...
Take me the rest of the way, Janine.
I think part of it might be the failure before creating the litter to do some research. One thing I say at the shelter to people that you know, talk about breeding their dogs is that if you have a specific breed you're going to breed, you have a responsibility to see how many of that breed are waiting in shelters to be adopted. So it's easy enough to go on petfinder.com and look up Labrador retrievers and see that there's 118,000 of them in shelters across the country, or whatever the number is. So, or to talk to the local shelter, or to talk to your veterinarian and see what the ramifications of breeding your dog are going to be. Talk to any number of people that bred their dog and they thought they'd have 4 or 5 puppies and they had 15. So dropping the ball at that point, I think, is important to note too.
Okay.
So maybe their intentions are good, or you know, and they don't intend to keep breeding and breeding and breeding, but failing to do some research at that point, you know, every life you create takes a home from a life that's already alive. So you know, there's a responsibility there.
Right. So they're just not fully informed, but they're not your a backyard breeder is not a puppy mill breeder.
Right.
No.
It's not
Right.
a business
No.
for them.
Right.
So
But anything for profit, again, I think that we need to understand that for a true puppy miller, it's a cash crop.
Right.
It's
Livestock,
it's
basically.
It's livestock.
Yep.
It's expendable. It doesn't matter. You know. So yes. I mean, you know, Janine, someone's got a purebred lab, and their neighbor does too, and they breed for puppies, and they're going to sell those dogs. You know, no. But Janine is right as far as like that does make an impact on the number of animals.
Yep.
and we're going to talk about that because, you know, I mean, well, first of all, what would your response be to someone who says, well, you know, I'm saving a dog's life no matter where I get this puppy or this mature dog from, whether it be a puppy store, a shelter, a rescue group, a friend, a neighbor. As long as I'm saving a life, what difference does it make where this dog's coming from?
Well, I think it matters to whom you give your money, basically. You know, if you adopt a dog from a shelter, you know, you pay a certain amount of money, and for that you get an animal that's already spayed or neutered and vaccinations and on and on. And you're supporting the bigger picture, which is the life-saving efforts of your local animal shelter. So if you give Joe Blow down the block $50 for his puppy, you basically paid him for breeding the dog, because that dog's not going to be altered. It's not, maybe has one set of puppy shots, and then the breeder thinks, well, that went pretty well. I had a litter of puppies, I made a little cash in my pocket. I was thinking about spaying my dog, but maybe not anymore. So, you know, like Joni just said, there's a greater impact. So, you know, you have to decide what you want to support. You know, do you want to support this you know, hobby breeder or whatever making more puppies, or do you want to support the animal shelter? And life saving, I don't know. Are the animals in shelters in danger of euthanasia when the population is such that there's no other alternative? In a lot of shelters, yes. Are Joe
are. Hopefully we're still taping. And that didn't stop all of our equipment. So, you know, so go ahead and finish your
Well,
thought.
that was just, you know, my point is just what effort do you want to support?
Well, and I'm going to speak much more strongly about that. Because I feel really
I was trying to be
about that.
polite.
Yes, you were. And bless your heart.
Thank
Janine.
you.
I just think it's abhorrent to perpetuate putting money into someone's pocket who lets these animals suffer the way they do. It is, those conditions are horrendous. They are horrible. And every time you purchase a puppy from them, even though you feel sorry for that puppy, you are perpetuating his livelihood. And he's going to continue to do it. And I know it's hard, and I know it's so difficult, because we've been there, we've seen it. You know, you want to rescue them all. You want, I mean, that's what we're in the business of doing.
Right.
But every time you do that, every time you pull out your wallet and you lay that money down, he doesn't care.
Right.
He doesn't care that you feel sorry for that animal. He's just like, wow, great, have your supper tonight.
And how many times have we heard this? I went to this place
And I
I
rescued.
realized it was a puppy mill once I got there, but I couldn't leave without taking a puppy.
Right. Well,
Great. And like Joni just said, he doesn't care. You
It's
paid for the
supply and
puppy.
demand.
Yeah.
It's supply and demand, and as long as, you're doing that, you're fulfilling, what he's in the. Because he doesn't care if people don't like him. He's not that. That's not what they're in the business for.
You know, you go to buy a car, and you get to walk through the factory, and you see people not caring about how they're putting the car together, and you know that it's, the worst car in the history of automobiles. But you feel bad about do you buy one anyway? No. You have to think about what's the product that's being created, and even though your product is a living being, you're supporting the way the product is being created, and that's what it's all about.
How can someone know if they're getting a puppy that has come from a puppy mill? Now, you said that some, they go to these places, and once they get there, they find out it's a puppy mill. So you can actually go to a place.
Sure.
Some of
Okay.
them, sure.
Yeah,
Right.
sure.
Some of them?
There's all kinds of them out
Yep.
there. I mean,
Okay.
there's just, you can drive right up into the driveway, and I guarantee you they'll take you in the back of the barn there, and there'll be all the cages in
you
a
have
row.
money in your
And you're
hand.
never going to see the parents.
Okay.
I can guarantee you that. You're never going to see the parents. You're going to see these cute little bundles of joy that, are all full of filth and everything else. And, and you're going to say, oh my God, I got to save that one. And that's what's going to happen. And you're going to pay whatever they ask of you. And
Okay, so in a case like that, you obviously, you can visually
see it.
see it's a puppy mill. What if you go to a pet store now? Because I know that there are pet stores that, get their dogs from puppy mills.
Every pet store.
Every pet store.
Every pet store.
Every pet store.
Okay.
There are no, and this is, I can't say this strongly enough, no responsible breeder sells their dogs through a pet store, period. A good breeder will put you through the same paces that an animal shelter will put you through. They'll do home inspections, they'll ask for references, they'll make you sign spay-neuter contracts and stuff like that. The pet store, you got $400, here's a puppy. No responsible breeder. So any
Never.
pet store that says we don't buy from puppy mills, crap.
That's not true.
Of course they're not. What are they going to say? Oh, yeah, we do buy from. Of course they're not going to say that. So no responsible breeder, and any member of your local kennel club, any any quality breeder that you can have some common sense and recognize as a quality breeder will tell you, I'm not selling my puppies through a pet store, because a quality breeder feels a responsibility to the lives they have created. So they want to interview the adopter, just
And
like
to the breed.
Yeah.
And to the breed.
Yeah.
because they want to perpetuate temperament and good breed qualities, and,
Right.
and so they're
And they're going to make you sign spay or neuter contracts because they don't want just anybody buying a puppy and start to breed their own.
Sure.
You know? So, like Joni said before, we're talking about what a puppy mill isn't. A good breeder will make you sign and will enforce a spay neuter contract, and they will also want to have some sense of responsibility for that dog for the rest of its life. So 10 years down the road, you're ill, you can't care for your dog anymore, that breeder will take their dog back. If you're going to a breeder, you're buying from a breeder, and you don't get those two things, move on.
Okay.
That is 2 criteria for a good breeder.
Okay. What kind of a financial, and I know this has a lot of impacts on folks like you who run shelters and you know, are at this day in and day out. It has a financial impact, it has an emotional impact, you know, but let's talk about finances first, because that's what drives our society,
Yeah.
is dollars and cents.
Yeah.
And after all, it's dollars and cents that is creating this problem in the
It
first
is,
place, and
right.
somebody else's desire for a lot of dollars and cents. So they're making money hand over fist, as I clench mine, with this business. And what financial impact does it put on shelters such as yours?
Well, I think the financial impact obviously can be the fact that, you know, as a humane society, you've got, you know, it's supply and demand, as we talked about, you know, and if we can't adopt our animals out because there's a surplus of puppy mills where people are purchasing and buying them, and very often we're the ones that end up, you know, 3 months down the road, 4 months down the road when that animal has health issues or has behavioral issues because of, again, poor breeding, they come to the shelter. You know, and it has a tremendous impact on us from that perspective because, you know, shelters are so desperately trying to get away from that, you know, oh, they're at the shelter, they must be bad dogs. They must be bad animals because, you know, why else would they be there? And we're trying so desperately hard to do that, but yet we're being forced to take many of these animals that are poor quality, are poor, you know, they're damaged, literally damaged. Physically, you know, so it's, you know, it's a catch-22. We're in the business of trying to save lives, and yet we're being forced to accept some of these animals that are really in very, very poor condition. So from an impact, you know, people will come to us, they're looking for these animals. They aren't necessarily, they don't want to sign up for a dog that has a lot of these issues. People want a family pet, and unfortunately for a lot of these animals, you know, there's a lot of care and long-termness to that. So financially, can that have an impact on us? You bet. You know, I mean, people, you know, it's difficult. It's really hard because we're trying to perpetuate. We're in the business of saving lives, and yet we're on the other hand having to take so many of these animals that really have, like I said, tremendous issues. And so it's a catch-22 because shelters, I think, are criticized very often for euthanizing animals, and yet the public wants good quality pets. And so it's difficult, you know.
You'd agree with that then, Cheryl?
Yeah, I think so. And I think another point to that is, you know, somebody goes out and they're prepared to pay $400 for a dog. Again, what idea would you like to support? You know, maybe you can, you know, purebred dogs are available in shelters.
I was going to say,
You know, I
roughly
think-
about a third.
Well,
isn't
I
it?
think that
Yep,
depending on what
35%.
source you read, it's anywhere from like a half to 45%. Now, at our shelter in Green Lake, we see a lot of puppy mill cast-offs. There's about a dozen puppy mills in Green Lake County. The biggest commercial kennel in the state, I have to say commercial kennel because he listens to what I say, is actually located in Green Lake County, and at any one time they have between 1,000 and 1,500 dogs. Yeah, and we see a lot of the cast-offs from these places. So I bet the percentage is a lot higher at Green Lake. It's probably closer to a half. So you want a purebred whatever. You can look on Pet Finder, you can come to the shelter, and so you had the $400 to spend, but maybe you get your purebred dog from the shelter and you spend $100. And you get all these extras. It's already spayed or neutered, it's already been behaviorally assessed, it's got a health check. If there are health issues, at least you know that going in. So you're getting a lot more bang for your buck, and then your dollar is going to a much better cause.
Sure. And there are also, we should say, not to detract from your own business, you know, but
Rescues.
there are also rescues
Sure.
that are breed
Yeah.
specific.
I can't say
know.
enough petfinder.com. I don't care what kind of dog or cat or bird or fish you're looking for, you can find it in a shelter or rescue somewhere. And the more specific you are about what you want, or the more rare the breed you're looking for, you may need to be more patient, you may need to travel a little farther. But there's no question that you can find what you're looking for through a rescue, and there really is no reason to go through, you know, a pet store or a puppy mill or a backyard breeder or a hobby breeder.
Sure. You know, just one thing I wanted to check with both you ladies on, you know, a lot of the rescues, not all, and you'd have to ask, I suppose, if you're looking at adopting a dog or a cat from a rescue, but I know that a lot of rescues that I volunteer with, they do microchip their pets. Do you all at shelters, at least at your shelters, microchip them as well?
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. And I can't say enough about rescues. Rescues are really, you know, years ago, shelters and rescues used to be at opposite ends of each other. But boy, we really have networked, and we're really coming together. And they are. I work with some fantastic rescues, and I'll tell you, it just really helps to you know, the burden of some of these animals is just really.
And we wouldn't be able to help nearly as many puppy mill dogs as we do if we didn't rely on all breed rescues or breed specific rescues or anything to help us out, especially with some of the really special needs cases. You know, the dogs that are simply not going to be ready for adoption right upon exiting the puppy mill. They're going to need several months of work.
But I think we really need to look at that big picture. All of us here are involved in some way or another. Why are there so many? Because there's puppy mills. That's why.
Yeah.
That's why there are so many, and that's why we're putting this burden, and it's just it's abhorrent to me. Honestly, I was thinking about this on the way over. If a dog came in the condition that a lot of these puppy mill dogs live on a regular 24/7, and a dog came in from a home environment looking like that, I could contact the media and do a news release, and people would be outraged. They would be, everybody would want to adopt that dog, everybody would want to save it, people would just be, and they'd want this person to be, you know, annihilated, you know, because of the situation. And the truth of the matter is that we become, but yet somebody who has hundreds and hundreds of these animals, and that's how they live all the time, we're compliant about that. I don't understand that. I
think some of it is not that. I don't think it's that they're just willing to go along with it. I think it's people don't know.
Yeah.
It's shows like this and what Oprah has done in other such means that I think we have to get the word out.
And we have to tell the legislators. Every one of us has to. We can contact them through email. You probably have that website that, you know, I have it here someplace. But
NoWisconsinPuppyMills.com.
Right,
and there's ways to act. Just go to that website, and you can. There's 5 or 6 different things that you can do right now to make a difference.
And all you have to do is just email. You don't even have to have a plan. You can just say, I want laws. I want laws governing these types of facilities.
Right. Joni and I were just talking about this the other day. Not to interrupt you, but I wanted to get this out because it's important, and it really hit home for me when Joni said it. People need to contact their legislatures. There's legislators, and I don't think those messages are getting through right now. And what's happening is there's this sort of mid-level breeder, the hobby breeder, that doesn't want to be over-regulated or over-inspected. They want to just keep doing what they're doing, and they're kind of hovering between, you know, quality breeder and puppy mill, sort of. But it's those people that are contacting the legislators, because you and I are thinking, well, what difference could we possibly make with our one little email, right? So the message that's getting through to legislators is that puppy mill legislation is not supported. So you and I and everybody we know need to send our little emails, because it's going to make a difference.
It's the same as why people don't vote. Well, what difference can just my one vote count?
Exactly.
And yet, you know, one vote here, one vote there, it all adds up.
Right. Well, and the fact of the matter is, the people that are opposing it are much, much louder and are
Right.
in greater numbers.
Because
than
their
the people-
livelihood is
Exactly. Their
is in danger.
And seriously, they don't want inspectors. They don't want being regulated. You know, and I guess my response to that is that if you're a good breeder,
You should want it.
yeah, that's okay. You know, because they can come in and regulate our shelter. They can come in and inspect our shelter. I'm okay with that.
Now, you recently got rid of, you had how many dogs from a puppy mill, Joni?
Well, we helped her out. We took 10 or 12.
Oh, did they come from your
Yeah.
shelter?
Yeah, it was a
Okay.
puppy mill in Marquette
right.
County,
Okay.
actually, and it was a total of 64 dogs. 38 of them were beagles. We still have 12 beagles.
So cool in the shelter.
And Joni was talking about conditions. There was about 20 of these dogs that were, hair dogs, like Bichon Frises and Cavalier King Charles Spaniels, that the dog was about this big around. After we shaved it, it was this big. So just
Because it was all
years
matted?
of
Yeah.
dreadlocks,
Okay.
yeah, and matted to the point where the hair on their face would come down and be attached to the hair on their cheeks, and the hair on their cheeks would come down and be attached. So one dog, while we were clipping it, this is off the point, but to share with with people how bad it can be, we were clipping her face, and I got some hair right here, and as soon as I got some of the hair on one side, the dog literally went like that was the first time she had opened her mouth, and Lord knows how long.
Yeah.
So the conditions are not, like Joni said, if it was your neighbor's dog like that, you would be calling the police, but because it's out in the middle of nowhere, and to that point, I think for a lot of people, when we talk about puppy mills, you think of the poor little puppy. And we got to get the poor little puppy out of there. But that puppy's mother has been in that place for 10 years. And twice a year, like clockwork, every time she goes into heat, she is bred. And then next to her are her 3 sisters, and then down the road is another 100 dogs. So it's over and over and over again. It's those dogs. The puppies get out. They have some health and behavior issues. They get out at 6 or 8 weeks. It's the dogs that sit there for 8 or 10 years that
that's
it's just,
horrible.
it's absolutely, it's mind blowing.
And some of their feet have never touched solid ground.
No, it's just
You see them. You put them on the linoleum floor, and they just
and grass.
and grass.
For the
don't know what
first
to do.
time. Oh my God! It's like it's unbelievable. I mean, it's incredibly sad. It's just incredibly sad.
We have a puppy mill Chihuahua at the shelter right now, and she's fine on the shelter flooring inside the building, and she's fine in the pea gravel and the kennel runs. If we take her outside on the grass, she just stops. She can't deal with the grass.
Yeah,
What's
she just
that?
doesn't know what
yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
Well, Janine, we've got a little time left, but why don't you give your phone number for folks, so that they can contact you if they're
Sure.
interested in beagle puppies or anything else for that
adults,
matter.
right?
Beagle adults. Yeah.
Right.
Beagle adults, okay.
Joni took one very pregnant dog that day. So they did take, I think they ended up taking about 11 or 12 dogs, but inside one of those dogs was another 8 dogs.
There's a little more. Yeah.
So it's adults now, but our phone number is 920-294-3042. A few websites. You can go to, when you're researching a breeder, you can go to www.akc.org. You can type in a kennel name, you can type in a breeder name, and you can search. So if you are thinking of getting a dog from a specific breeder, search on AKC. One thing you can find is if they've had any violations. If
Right.
they have their registration privileges revoked or whatever the deal is. NoWisconsinPuppyMills.com. You can also search, I have a list here of registered Class A dealers. This is nationwide. This is registered Class A dealers. These are all puppy mills. This was 67
Oh my God.
pages. And these are Class B dealers. This was 18 pages. The difference is Class B dealers can sell to research labs. You can get this information at www.aphis.usda.gov. And you can also find out about inspections and violations as a result of those
Okay,
inspections too.
let me go over these again.
Okay.
And Joni, give your phone number. I think most people in town know how to find you, but
yes,
go
they
ahead
do.
and give it.
Yes, 920-424-2128.
And petfinder.com.
Yes.
The website address for legislation, to get more information on puppy mills, whatever, is www.nowisconsinpuppymills.com. Then akc.org.
Yes.
What can they find there?
They can
Janine?
find information about specific breeders.
Okay. All right, that's akc.org. And then this other one, I'm going to spell it because to say it is kind of weird. I guess it's APHIS.
It's APHIS.
Oh, APHIS,
Yep.
okay, whatever. But it's www, and this is the one to find all these breeders.
Right.
Yep.
These commercial
These are
breeders.
commercial breeders,
and people
yeah.
who sell to labs, which is another big no-no, and that
Yep.
would be another show altogether.
These
That's-
are licensed with USDA breeders.
Okay. But they're not good breeders, right?
No.
Yes.
Oh,
And
okay.
these are-
Then
If
we
they're
get to that
licensed with
point.
the USDA, there's a red flag
All
right
right.
there. There's too many dogs.
Just because they're licensed with the federal government,
That-
that's
Right.
not to be confused with being
Right.
good.
If you have enough dogs, you have to be licensed with them.
Okay, so that is www.apphis, as in Sam, .usda.gov. And I'm going to try and remember to get these on my website too. So anyway, we're out of time, but thank you
Thank
both
you.
for being
Thank
here.
you.
I will
Appreciate
have
it.
Eileen on in the next couple of months.
Wonderful.
And we'll spend an
That'd
hour
be great.
talking about this.
Good.
So thanks to both of you, thanks to the crew, and thanks to you at home for letting us in your home for the last hour. We'll see you next time. Until then, take good care. Keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.